The purpose of this recording is to go through some exam questions that you completed last week. We'll go through each question in depth, so it might be worth checking what you got on this test or this quiz, and then only watching the video on the questions that you didn't do as well on, maybe because you didn't understand them, or maybe because you need to watch them because you didn't do very well, but you thought you did. Hopefully the video helps, and if you have any questions, please send me a message on It's Learning. Okay then, so the first question was using a figure, which is showing us a world map of global ecosystems, and there's only 3 that we can see: the temperate deciduous forest, the tropical rainforest, and the hot desert. Using figure 6, which of the following statements are true? So you only need to pick one of the statements. So the best way to do this is through a process of elimination. There is a greater area of hot desert in the southern hemisphere than in the northern hemisphere. So if we're looking for hot deserts, the equator line is here. So this is the southern hemisphere and this is the northern hemisphere. It's pretty obvious that there's more hot deserts in the northern hemisphere, so A cannot be true. B, the largest single area of tropical rainforest is found in South America. So these green areas, yes, there's lots of tropical rainforests found in Asia, but they aren't all one. There are lots of smaller ones. So this one could be true, but I'd still go through and read the rest as well. Temperate deciduous forests are found all over the western sides of continents. So if we're talking about the western side, well, temperate deciduous, yes, is found on the western side of Europe, but it's not found on the western side of North America. It's not found on the western side of Africa, nor is it found on the western side of Asia, nor is it found on the western side of Oceania. So that one cannot be true. And then the next one, hot deserts are found between the 2 tropics. So they're not all found between the 2 tropics, because if we look here in the Middle East and also in Northern Africa and also in the United States of America, they're not found within the 2 tropics. So the answer to this one was B. The next question then, outline one reason for the distribution of tropical rainforests. So for this one, there was quite a few things that we had to do, but we only had to give one reason. So you could have talked about the fact that tropical rainforests have high rainfall. And they have high rainfall because they're found in low pressurized areas. And low pressurized areas are found along the equator. And this is because of convectional rainfall. So the sun heats the ground, and then this hot air rises, and as it rises, it cools and condenses and makes clouds, and then it rains. And it can also give off thunderstorms. Okay? So you need to mention these words: low pressure. They're found along the equator. So there's high rainfall. The reason that the air can rise and cool and condense is because of the sun's rays. So the sun's rays are more concentrated along the equator. So they're the types of things that you would have had to mention for this question. Question 2.3 then, so this is question 3 on your test. Which global ecosystem is most likely to have the temperature and precipitation shown in figure 7? So the highest levels of temperature, now if you look very carefully at the temperature, this dot here is actually showing us 0 degrees, which means that all of these are plus in degrees and all of these are minus in degrees. So the highest temperature is actually only 1 degree C. It's the max temperature. And the lowest temperature is minus 32 degrees C. So it can't be a savanna, it can't be a hot desert, and it can't be a deciduous forest, so it has to be a tundra. The next one then. Shade the minimum temperature shown in figure 7. So you would need to know, and it even tells you this. If it didn't tell you, this line here, this red line here, is temperature, and the blue bars or the bars are always precipitation. So you're looking at temperature, so you're looking at the red line. So the lowest point of this line is at this section here. So you would have to go along to the temperature line, which is 30 degrees. So the answer here is C, which is 30 degrees. Okay. Next question then. Give one reason why polar regions have a low temperature throughout the year. So you would have to know where the polar regions are in relation to the world. So in the north of the world, we have the North Pole, and in the south of the world, we have the South Pole. And they are the furthest away from the equator. Now we know that the equator is 0 degrees north and south, and that is where the sun is the most concentrated. So the rays near the equator are the most concentrated, and the further away we move from the equator, the further the rays have to move, and therefore the rays are less concentrated. So you'd have to talk about the pole's relation or the location to the equator. You could have also spoke about the fact, so I'm just going to remove all of this. You also could have referred to the Earth's tilt. So you can see here that the Earth is on a slight tilt. So if I drew a line straight down, it's pretty obvious that it's on a tilt, which means that at some parts of the year, so 6 months of the year, the polar regions receive no sunlight, and that's to do with the Earth's tilt. Okay, so that's another one that you could have talked about. But remember, it's only one reason, and you don't even have to develop it because it's only worth 1 mark. The next question then, using figure 8 and your own understanding, explain how development in tropical rainforests creates economic advantages but a cost to the environment. So this is worth 6 marks. We're going to have to talk about 2 P chains. You'd have 1 P chain talking about economic benefits, and then 1 paragraph talking about the environmental negatives. So why it's good for the economy, why it's good for money and jobs, and why it's bad for the environment and nature. Okay, so what can we see in the 2 figures? Well, the top figure, sorry, so we'll call this one 1 and we'll call this one 2. So in figure 8, we can see lots of soil erosion. And the soil erosion is a direct result of deforestation. So I would say that this was an environmental negative. You could talk about the fact that this has made the land unstable. It means that you won't be able to build on it, so it will be less useful for building on. and it also removes or a removal of a space for habitats. But then you could talk about the fact, even though it says use figure 8, you can also bring in your own understanding. So you can also give other examples that aren't obvious in this first photograph. So you could talk about the fact that plants become extinct, as can animals such as the orangutans. You could talk about water quality being affected. You could talk about climate change because of the erosion and the deforestation. Okay, and these are some examples, and this is all to do with this first figure. So now I'm going to remove all this information and we're going to talk about figure 2. So figure 2 is looking mostly at the economic benefits, and what we can see is a large scale. Let me just get rid of all of this information. Oh. It looks like some sort of mining is going on, so possibly open cast mining, or maybe coal mining. Okay. Now, obviously this is a benefit because it's going to bring in lots of investment from countries. It's going to improve employment. And the GDP of the country, which could improve the development. It could lead to large profits, and then could also lead to more jobs and more investment. And then you could also talk about other economic advantages that aren't mentioned here. So you could talk about palm oil that isn't mentioned in here. You could talk about urbanisation and the fact that if it leads to urban sprawl, it will bring more money into the area because there'll be more people living there. So it's just very important to remember that if you only refer to figure 8 and you simply describe, you will get a maximum of 4 marks. So you need to make sure that you bring in your own understanding as well as using the figures and talking about how it's created economic advantages. So it's been good for the economy, good for money, good for jobs, but it's also been bad for the environment. And these are the final 2 questions. So the first question says, using figure 9, suggest how ecotourism can help manage tropical rainforest sustainability. Now, from this image, we're only suggesting it's only worth 2 marks. It looks quite small scale. So is it going to have that much of an impact? Is it going to help manage tropical rainforest sustainability? That's one thing you could refer to. So it's going to have little impact. You could talk about the fact that they're staying in huts, which are small. So aren't deforesting to make hotels. They've kept lots of vegetation there to protect local ecosystems. And you could say that the money that's used from this ecotourism, so money that's produced, can help develop the area further. So it could help them get education into the problems of deforestation. Okay. And then the final question, explain how either international hardwood agreements or selective logging can encourage the sustainable management of tropical rainforests. Now, I'm going to talk about both, but you would have only had to speak about one in your answer. So hardwood agreements is going to be in my yellow colour and selective logging is going to be in blue. So let's start with international hardwood agreements. So this is ensuring that wood is legally sourced. Just to stop some of the wood from being taken, which is good. So it's to reduce rare hardwood trees from being deforested. Whereas selective logging is a little bit different. Selective logging includes only cutting down trees, so felling trees when fully grown. And by doing that, that will stop erosion from occurring. In addition, it's also about allowing them to, or preventing them from logging trees that may be used for medicinal purposes. So only removing trees which don't have medicinal features so that they can still use them to help move forwards for the tribes that are living in the rainforest and also for researchers that are investing a lot of money into the rainforest trees. Okay, so hopefully this helps you. Make sure please that you're only watching maybe the bits of the video that relate to the questions that you didn't do very well in. And if you're still unsure and still want a little bit of advice, please send me a message on It's Learning.